Okay, in this video I'm going to be jumping back into tactics. I'm pulling information from TC 7-100.2 Opposing Force Tactics 2011. Something that I figured I can take from that and adapt for a video here is defensive operations priorities of work. I'm going to be focusing on roughly one particular rifle platoon inside the guerrilla company that's part of a larger defensive operation. Our mission for the company is to close off a road, which is right here. Now inside our sector we have woods, which is on both sides of the road. We have a hill over here, which is where the heavy weapons platoon is going to be positioned. In front of the tree line, we have open fields. Former farm fields that have not been planted with crops because of the battles and the war going on in the area. Now I will read to you from the list of priorities of work. It's in 3 phases, and with each phase I will add to our little drawing down there, our graphic. I was just trying to find my notebook quick that has stuff I was going to be putting on here. First priority, preparation tasks. Tasks for combat troops and engineers. First, clear fields of observation and fire, and place obstacles integrated with CSOPs, CSOP, which are combat security outposts and platoon positions. Dig 1- or 2-man foxholes for riflemen, machine gun crews, snipers, and operators of grenade launchers, man-portable anti-tank guided missiles, and shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles, your man-pads. Connect foxholes into a squad trench, open slit trench, so no overhead cover. Prepare a continuous trench in platoon and company positions. Prepare emplacements at primary firing positions for infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers, tanks, ATGM launchers, and other weapons in the platoon or company position. Build basic positions, covered slit trenches, for platoon, company, battalion, and battalion detachment command centers, or command posts. Build basic positions, covered slit trenches, for battalion or company medical points, your casualty collection points, and your aid stations. Dig and prepare covered slit trenches for each squad, crew, or team. Camouflage positions, weapons, and vehicles against reconnaissance and for protection against enemy precision weapons. Tasks specifically for engineers. Emplace additional obstacles on most likely axes of enemy attack, in gaps between units, on their flanks, and in the depth of the battle position. Deepen sections of trenches and communications trenches, and provide covered shelters for equipment on terrain that provides concealment from enemy observation and fire, and permits use of engineer mechanized equipment, if you have it. Prepare lines of firing positions for reserve counterattack forces. Prepare forward movement routes to these lines and to lines of deployment for counterattacks. Prepare routes for movement to the lines of deployment for the counterattack, lines of deployment of reserves, and firing positions. Set up water supply and distribution points. So that's our initial priorities of work in the defense. So first, we will get our platoon set up here. Well, first off, we got this road. We're trying to close this off. So one of the first things we're going to get sighted in, near the edge of the woods, but not right on it. This will be our anti-tank guided missile position. So their sector of fires will be out this way. And the platoon on the other side should probably do the same so that their sector of fire is going this way. We will also emplace a machine gun position in almost the center here. And his sector is all out in front here. If we have an additional machine gun position, we will probably position it up over here, overwatching the roadway, assisting the anti-tank guided missile. Now, in between those positions covering the entire area, we're going to put in 1-man and 2-man positions. These will be whatever's appropriate and the troops know how to put in. And it should fit whatever the platoon leader's defensive plan is, how he wants this to set up. So you'll probably toss in some 2-man foxholes. You'll spread those out, and you're going to generally keep them online. Maybe back just a little bit from the machine gun position, and I'll show you why. So we're tossing in our different positions, and maybe we'll toss in some V-shaped hasties also. But we're putting in our line up here. Our initial positions, which will start out as hasties, and as time goes on, you dig them deeper. We will put in our platoon command post wherever the platoon leader wants it. He may want it in the center of the sector, he may want it closer to the road. But right now we'll put the platoon CP right here. The casualty collection point for the platoon will be back near that command post. Now a little bit farther back, supply will set up a cache point for the sector. So we'll put in some supplies here. For right now, they're just sitting out under guard. Farther back will be our company CP. We will also have our company casualty collection point. And we will put in the company mortars. And we'll make these 81s. If we have platoon mortars, 60 millimeters, they will be positioned where they can do the most good or be the most help. A lot of it will depend as to how thick the trees are, because you don't want to be launching your rounds right into the trees and exploding them right over your heads. Now, while this is going on, you will have sent forward some LPOPs. So we'll just toss a couple of these. These will be way far forward. They'll be put on the likely avenues of approach for the enemy. You'll have one that will watch more towards the road, but he should also be watching the wood line or whatever's up ahead. This one way over here should be watching likely avenues of approach for dismounted infantry. Now you'll also send forward, as part of your screening force, your recon teams, and their job is doing counter reconnaissance to stop the enemy scouts from finding where you're at. You'll also send forward some snipers. Their job will be to take care of any patrols that are coming forward from the enemy. Start putting some rounds into them, giving our people some warning, taking down some of their people. Now the engineers, the first mission that they're going to get is put in some wire across the road here. Now the edge of the wire should be back just a little bit from the leading edge of the ATGM position so that you don't get caught up in case you have to fire out right across the roadway or to potentially to a vehicle that's on the other side. After they finish that, then they will go through and they will put in an anti-personnel minefield forward of the positions up in here. But the LPOPs will get told where the clear lanes are, how they're supposed to come in and out of the position down here, so they don't end up walking right through the mines. So they should have a fairly well marked route that they can see, they understand. So we're going to put in a minefield here, and it will be behind the LPOPs. It's going to be an anti-personnel minefield. The mines, for the most part, will be set on tripwire. That's what the little bunny ears over the top of the circles mean. When you're looking at graphics, if the circles are clear, it's a plotted minefield that may not be in yet, or it could be a suspected minefield that we have not found the exact edges of it. Once the minefield is in, we know exactly its edges. If it's an enemy minefield, then the little circles get filled in. That's one of those graphics things. Now, individual squads will start tying in some of their positions. They'll start putting in some shallow communications trenches between the positions. And that's where having these slit trenches, these 2-bit foxholes, just a little bit back from the machine gun position comes in place. So we're going to extend the edge going over to the anti-tank position. We're going to go right behind the machine gun position, and then they're going to have a little trench coming back to it. We're going to go back to this foxhole over here, and then we have the one squad is in position. And you just keep going like that. Each squad does their little area before you link them together as a platoon. You will also run your communications wires for your field telephones from your squads back to your platoon command post. And then the platoon command post will string their communications wire going back to the company CP back here, so that they're all tied in. They can communicate without using the radios. Now, some people will put a field telephone out by the LPOP, but that's also a really good way to find out where they're at by just tracking that wire. So any wire that's run out to a LPOP needs to be camouflaged, it needs to be buried. Okay. Second priority preparation tasks. Tasks for combat troops and engineers. Improve company and platoon positions, adding overhead cover if possible. Finish building and improving the command posts and medical points. Dig emplacements at alternate and temporary fighting positions for the IFVs and APCs, tanks, and other weapons. Dig emplacements at firing lines and assembly areas for IFVs, APCs, tanks, and other weapons. Dig communications trenches to primary and alternate fighting positions for the mechanized equipment. Also to shelters, to command posts, and to the rear. Prepare dugouts on the basis of 1 per platoon and 1 per company, battalion, or battalion detachment medical point. When possible, make covered slit trenches or dugout shelters for each squad, weapons crew, and team. Create and upgrade the system of trenches and communications trenches from a combat and housekeeping standpoint. Housekeeping and sanitary preparation of trenches includes making niches for storing food, water, equipment, making latrines, sumps to drain away water, soakage pits, and drainage ditches. Tasks for the engineers: connect individual emplacements into emplacements for squads with sections of trench dug with mechanized equipment. Prepare a continuous trench in the battalion or battalion detachment battle position. Make bunkers for each company battery and at battalion and battalion detachment CPs. Make shelters for vehicles, weapons, equipment, missiles, ammunition, and other supplies. See your supply caches and supply points. Prepare main dummy objects in the company position or battalion detachment battle position. So dummy positions that are more obvious to draw the enemy fire. Prepare for demolition of roads, bridges, overpasses, and other important objectives in the depth of the defense. Prepare routes for maneuver, resupply, and evacuation. Now we have basic squad trenches are done in each squad area. Back here, the platoon leader, his radio operator, and the medic have dug a pit for the platoon CP. They have a tarp over the top for a little bit of cover. The supply point is set up. If there's people that are available, they start working on digging in the supply point, starting to dig a bunker for it. And then back here, the crews and that stuff have done their own positions. The heavy weapons platoon has spread their weapons out up here to support the rest of the company, minus their mortars, which were brought in closer to the company CP so that the company commander had more direct control with them in case communications breaks down during the battle. Now we're moving in to our second stage preparations. So now we're connecting into a platoon trench line. We're connecting the different squads' trenches together. We're also putting in a communications trench going back to the platoon CP at a minimum, and if we have time, we continue that trench down to where the supply bunker is. We're continuing to improve the area. The machine gun positions are probably going to be our first ones to end up with overhead cover. They'll be dug in. People will contribute their sandbags and that stuff to it, help with cutting logs and that stuff for overhead cover. The individual two-man foxholes became part of the trench system. The V-shaped hasties ended up becoming positions just in front of the trench line. The back of the V-shaped hasty goes right into the trench. The V-shapes then get dug down into the deliberate position, so it's getting dug down to roughly chest depth. And after the machine gun positions have overhead cover, the saw positions have overhead cover, then you'll go through on the V-shapes and you'll start putting in overhead cover at least on the legs of it, if not completely. Now the engineers in this second phase, they went up to the roadway here. It was a dirt road. So they created an area, they marked it off, they put in some wire in back here, just as a rear marking, so a single roll of wire or a little frat fence. And then they buried in the roadway up in here anti-tank mines. They did a hasty point minefield up in there. Now also as part of the second phase, the engineers went in and they put in a fence line along the edge of the tree line going across the sector. So we have wire that's been put in there as part of our defensive perimeter also. The troops up in here, some of them would get tasked with putting in trip flares on the fence and also putting in additional claymores to cover the fence for if the enemy tries breaching it. Now we do still have this potentially open sector right in here, but that's also an entry and exit point for getting in so that our scouts and that stuff, snipers, can come in through here without walking through a minefield or having to go through a fence. Now back here, when they're working on stuff, the CCP, the casualty collection point, ends up with a communications trench going down to the company position, the company command post. We have a trench that's getting dug, communications trench, going out to the 81mm mortar pits, connecting them in. Our next phase, phase 3, third priority preparation tasks. Tasks for combat troops and engineers. Finish building or improving communications trenches and preparing positions. Improve engineer preparation of company positions and the battalion or the battalion detachment battle position. Improve the platoon positions and squad and weapon positions in a tactical and housekeeping respect. Connect squad trenches in the platoon and company position with one another, if this has not already been done. Build a system of engineer obstacles, which primarily would be forward of the battle position. Develop a system of trenches and communications trenches in the company position or battalion detachment battle position. Establish shelters for personnel and continue building shelters for equipment and deepening trenches and communications trenches. Adapt the communications trenches for conducting fire, so you're making them deeper. Cover some parts of the trenches with overhead cover. Prepare dugout shelters at platoon command posts. Set up shelters, one per company and per battalion or battalion detachment command post. So their little sleep area right off the command post. Dig communications to the rear. First with a depth of 0.6 meters and then 1.1 meters. Equip the trenches and communication trenches with alternate, lateral, and forward foxholes and emplacements for firing machine guns and grenade launchers, and with embrasures, overhead protection, and niches or recesses for ammunition. So they're talking about putting on overhead cover over some of the trenches and then having firing ports in it. That's what your embrasures are: prepare dummy fighting positions and battle positions. Tasks of the engineers: develop or improve a network of routes for unit maneuver, supply, and evacuation. Expand the system of obstacles. Improve fighting positions, firing lines, lines of deployment for counterattack, lines of deployment of reserves, command posts, assembly areas of reserves, and logistics elements. Now we're going into our phase 3. We're improving the stuff more. We're now going to be linking the platoons together, and we're going to be expanding our engineer obstacles. So we're putting in now a wire going down the side of the road to this wire. We're also going to put in, the engineers are going to put in a berm going across the road. That earth will be some of it that's been excavated from the trenches. We're making them deeper. Now we're going down to chest depth, and then for our firing platform towards the front, and then we're going down another foot to 2 foot behind that so people can move back and forth out of the line of fire. We're also going to put in an alternate trench line in here, also going back to the berm. And then we'll have an exit from the trench going out that way. This is our alternate for covering the roadway. Now the platoon on the other side, they will use the berm as cover for coming across, going to the company command post. But we will have another communications trench which will go up to that area. So people can come out of this one, come down in this one, and go back into the company command post. We've expanded the communications trench from the supply point going back to the casualty collection point. The heavy weapons platoon up top has come in. They've put in their own communications trench which will come down to the casualty collection point. Now there will be bends and turns inside the trenches, especially when you go deeper, in order to limit the effects of artillery and mortars going off inside the trenches. That's why you have those bends and that stuff in them like you see in World War I trenches. That's to minimize the blast effects. But just for writing it up on here right now, for laying it out, I'm just doing it as straight trenches, just for the graphics. Now, when the battle is about to begin, the enemy force is moving forward. We've improved as much as we can. The LPOPs will come back. Our scouts, our snipers and that stuff will come back. And typically, your recon elements, your scouts and that stuff will be the last ones to pull back. Now behind our main trench line here, there will be spread out in here some hasty positions as our alternate, as the next line. It could be based off of the supply point here, it could be based off of the platoon C point, CP. Those are our alternate fighting positions for this battle. Hopefully this gives you somewhat of an idea on how this works. For priorities of work, first off, like it says, you're going to get your hasties put in. One person will be working on the hasty position, while one person's working on clearing the fields of fire. Once the fields of fire are clear, that person comes back and continues helping build that fighting position. You then move into connecting those positions together with a shallow communications trench that a person can crawl through, doing a low crawl, high crawl. And then as it improves, you go to, deeper where you can walk through it easily. Always maintain security, especially for air. Having your air defense teams are set up at all times in positions where they're going to be able to take out any attacking aircraft coming in, any gunships, and also taking out any reconnaissance aircraft coming in, such as drones or helicopters or whatever. Hopefully this gives you somewhat of an idea on how this type of thing works. There are other videos I'm going to do on defenses here. This is a simple battle position where the enemy is to the front. We're not too much worried about our flanks in this particular part because we're in the middle of our defensive line that's being put in by the company and by the battalion. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.